her world shattered with the slam of a gavel. 6 months pregnant and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for grand larceny. Her name is Amelia Sterling, and she stood accused of stealing $5 million from her own husband, the tech millionaire Alistair Sterling. He watched from the gallery, his face a mask of cold disappointment. Beside him, the woman who orchestrated it all, his COO, the serpent, disguised as a friend. Amelia was innocent, a pawn in a venomous game of greed and obsession. This isn't just a story of a wrongful conviction, it's the story of a mother's unyielding fight from behind bars, the unraveling of a perfect lie, and a husband's devastating confession that came far, far too late. The Sterling penthouse on the 80th floor of Bayview City's Celestial Tower was less a home and more a museum of a perfect life. Sunlight filtered through triple-paned floor-to-ceiling glass, glinted off polished chrome and stark white marble. It was a space designed to be admired, not lived in, a testament to the sterile, calculated genius of its owner, Alistair Sterling, CEO and founder of Sterling Innovations. For his wife Amelia, an art restorer by trade, it often felt like a beautiful gilded cage. Her own small studio, tucked away in a corner of the sprawling apartment, was her only sanctuary, a chaotic, colourful haven smelling of turpentine and linseed oil amidst the silent, minimalist expanse. Amelia traced the soft curve of her belly, a gentle swell that was just beginning to press against the silk of her dress. 6 months. In 3 more, she and Alistair would welcome their first child, a son. It was the one thing that made the sterile perfection of their life feel real, the one shared project that felt born of love rather than acquisition. Alistair was obsessed with legacy, with building an empire for the next generation of Sterlings. For Amelia, it was simpler. She just wanted a family. Their life, however, was rarely just the two of them. It was a trinity, completed by the ever-present, ever-efficient Isabella Vance. As the chief operating officer of Sterling Innovations, Isabella was more than Alistair's right hand. She was his shadow, his echo. With her razor-sharp bob, immaculately tailored suits, and a smile that never quite reached her cool, assessing eyes, she moved through their world with an unnerving sense of ownership. She organized their schedules, vetted their social engagements, and often lingered at the penthouse long after the workday was done, nursing a glass of scotch with Alistair as they discussed projections and acquisitions. "You're a lifesaver," Izzy Alistair would often say, a casual affection in his tone that always made Amelia's stomach tighten. Amelia tried to like her. She truly did, she told herself. The discomfort she felt was her own insecurity, a relic of her middle-class upbringing, clashing with Alistair and Isabella's world of cutthroat ambition. Isabella, for her part, played the role of a supportive friend beautifully. She brought Amelia prenatal vitamins she'd researched extensively, offered to design the nursery with optimal cognitive development in mind, and always complimented Amelia's choice of attire, even as her eyes subtly scanned her from head to toe, cataloguing and dismissing. The trouble began on a Tuesday. It was subtle, a conversation cloaked in concern. Alistair was finalizing a sensitive off-the-books acquisition to fund the initial confidential down payment without alerting the markets he had liquidated certain assets into $5 million in bearer bonds. They were the financial equivalent of cash, untraceable, anonymous, and incredibly dangerous if they fell into the wrong hands. For security, he'd brought them home, storing them in the custom-built biometric safe hidden behind a minimalist painting in his study. Isabella was at the penthouse that evening, the three of them having a light dinner. "Alistair, are you sure it's wise to keep them here?" she asked, her brow furrowed with practiced worry. "The security in this building is world-class, of course, but something so liquid. It's a liability. It's safer here than anywhere else, Alistair countered, swirling his wine. Only Amelia and I have access to the safe. My fingerprint, her fingerprint. A dual lock fail safe. He smiled at Amelia, a rare, genuine smile that made her heart ache with love. I trust my wife. Isabella's gaze flickered to Amelia, a brief, unreadable expression crossing her face before being replaced by her usual polished smile. Of course you do. Forgive my paranoia. I just worry about you, about all of you. She placed a hand on Amelia's arm. Especially with the baby coming, you need absolute peace of mind. 2 days later, Amelia was in her studio, painstakingly restoring a 17th century seascape when her phone buzzed. It was a text from Alistair. Forgot the preliminary agreement docs for the merger. They're in the safe. Could you possibly have a courier bring them to the office? ASAP, you're a star. I. The I was odd. Alistair never signed his texts to her. She chalked it up to him being in a hurry. Putting down her fine-tipped brush, she walked to his study. The room was cold, dominated by a monolithic mahogany desk. She placed her thumb on the scanner pad, concealed on the side of the frame of the painting. It beeped green. Then, a second prompt lit up requesting the secondary print. A strange protocol. Alistair had never enabled it for simple document retrieval before. Shrugging, she pressed her thumb to the pad again. The mechanism clicked, and the painting swung away from the wall, revealing the sleek black face of the safe. She entered the passcode, their anniversary, and the heavy door swung open. She retrieved the thick manila folder, labeled Project Nightingale. As she was closing the door, her eyes fell upon the 5 neat stacks of large denomination bearer bonds. They sat there inert and powerful, a staggering fortune in a simple steel box. For a fleeting second, she felt a dizzying sense of vertigo, a sudden awareness of the immense alien world of wealth she now inhabited. She closed the safe, the painting swung back into place, and she thought nothing more of it. She called Alistair's trusted courier service and sent the documents on their way. The following Monday, the world ended. Amelia was arranging flowers in the living room when Alistair came home early. His face was pale, his jaw set in a line as hard as granite. He didn't kiss her hello. He didn't even look at her. He strode directly to his study, and she followed a cold dread coiling in her stomach. Isabella was with him, her expression a mask of somber sympathy. "The bonds are gone, Amelia," Alistair said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He was staring at the open, empty safe. "What? That's impossible." Amelia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I saw them on Thursday when I got your documents." Alistair turned to face her slowly. The warmth she loved in his eyes was gone, replaced by an icy suspicion. "The documents, I never asked you for any documents." Isabella stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on Alistair's arm. "Alistair, we checked the logs. The safe was opened Thursday at 2:17 p.m. A dual print authorization was used, but both prints were Amelia's. She must have overridden your primary scan. And the courier you called, Alistair's preferred service, has no record of a pickup from this address that day." Amelia's mind reeled. "No, Alistair. I got your text, right here." She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking. She scrolled through her messages, her heart pounding against her ribs. It wasn't there. The message was gone. "It was here. I swear it was here. It must have deleted. I don't know." "A text?" Alistair scoffed a cruel, bitter sound. "A $5 million theft, and your defense is a mysteriously vanished text message. Why would I do this? Alistair, why would I steal from us? I'm carrying your son," she cried, tears streaming down her face. It was Isabella who answered, her voice soft and laced with poison. Perhaps you were scared, Amelia. This world, it's a lot to handle. Maybe you wanted a safety net. Something just for you in case things didn't work out. The insinuation was monstrous, painting her as a conniving gold digger. She looked at her husband, pleading with her eyes for him to see the absurdity, the insanity of the accusation. But Alistair's face was unreadable. His trust, the very bedrock of their marriage, was being eroded by the second, washed away by Isabella's carefully chosen words. "We have to call the police," Isabella said softly, as if the thought pained her. "No," Amelia begged, reaching for Alistair. "Alistair, please, look at me. You know me." He flinched away from her touch as if she were a viper. He looked from her tear-streaked face to the empty safe, and then to Isabella's steady, supportive gaze. In that moment, surrounded by the cold, hard evidence of his perfect, logical world, he made his choice. He chose the version of the story that made sense on paper. "Call Detective Miller," he said to Isabella, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Tell him my wife has stolen $5 million. Detective Robert Miller was a man who believed in patterns. In his 20 years with the Bayview City Police Department, he'd learned that human beings, for all their complexities, were creatures of predictable greed, jealousy, and desperation. When he got the call about a theft at the Sterling penthouse, he already had a narrative forming in his mind. Tech billionaire, younger wife from a modest background, it was a story as old as money itself. He arrived to a scene of frigid tension. Alistair Sterling stood like a statue by his study window, staring out at the city that lay at his feet. Isabella Vance was at his side, a calming presence, murmuring assurances. And in the center of the vast living room, looking small and fragile, was Amelia Sterling. Her face was blotchy from crying, her hands clutching her pregnant belly, as if to shield her unborn child from the nightmare unfolding around her. Miller's assessment was swift and colored by his preconceived notions. He saw a frightened woman, yes, but he interpreted her fear as guilt. He saw Alistair's cold fury and Isabella's composed concern as the reactions of the wronged. "Mrs. Sterling," Miller began, his voice purposefully neutral. "Mr. Sterling and Ms. Vance have explained the situation. Would you like to tell me your side of what happened?" Amelia's words tumbled out, a frantic, disjointed account of the text message, the courier, the strange dual fingerprint prompt. She sounded, even to her own ears, hysterical and grasping at straws. "A text message you no longer have?" Miller asked, making a note on his pad. "And a courier from a company that has no record of the pickup. Can you describe the courier?" "He was average," Amelia stammered, trying to conjure a face that had been entirely unremarkable at the time. "Brown hair, a uniform. A blue one. I think I didn't pay much attention." "I trusted him." "You trusted an unknown courier with a folder from a safe containing millions of dollars in negotiable bonds." Miller's skepticism was a physical force in the room. "I thought he was from Alistair's regular service." "The text told me to get the documents, so I did," she insisted, her voice rising in panic. Isabella cleared her throat softly. "Detective, if I may," she interjected, her tone dripping with reluctant helpfulness. "Alistair's company, Sterling Innovations, is in the middle of a very sensitive merger. The documents Amelia mentioned, Project Nightingale, are real. However, they were not due to be couriered anywhere, and they certainly weren't in the safe. They were on Alistair's desk the entire time." She pointed to the mahogany desk, where the exact same manila folder sat in plain sight. Amelia's blood ran cold. It was a perfect damning detail. A piece of bait she hadn't even realized she'd taken. "That's not the one I sent," she whispered, but the words were feeble, lost in the tidal wave of evidence against her. "The building's security cameras unfortunately have a blind spot in the service corridor leading to the delivery elevator," Isabella added, as if pained to deliver more bad news. "We discovered that last month during a security review. It's scheduled to be rectified." Another perfect coincidence. Another nail in Amelia's coffin. Detective Miller nodded slowly, his expression hardening. The pattern was complete. A disgruntled wife feeling insecure in her husband's world creates an elaborate but clumsy cover story to explain the disappearance of a fortune she has siphoned away for herself. The interrogation moved to the precinct, a sterile, windowless room that smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Amelia sat alone, the reality of her situation crashing down on her. Alistair hadn't come with her. He had stayed behind with Isabella. He had chosen his COO over his pregnant wife. Miller and another detective questioned her for hours. They went over her story again and again, picking it apart, highlighting the inconsistencies, her lack of proof. They brought up her background, her parents' modest home in the suburbs, the student loans she'd had before she met Alistair. The implication was clear: she was out of her depth, a woman who saw a winning lottery ticket and decided to cash it in. "Where's the money, Amelia?" Miller asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Tell us where the bonds are, and we can talk to the DA. Maybe we can make a deal factor in your condition." "There is no money. I didn't take anything," she sobbed, her body racked with tremors. "Isabella is lying. She has to be. Ms. Vance, the COO who has helped Mr. Sterling build his empire for the last 10 years. The woman with a spotless record and a multi-million-dollar stock portfolio of her own. Why would she frame you?" Amelia had no answer. How could she explain the subtle, venomous jealousy she'd sensed for months? How could she describe the feeling of being slowly, methodically replaced in her own life? It sounded like the paranoid rambling of a guilty mind. The arrest was a blur of cold metal and flashing lights. The click of the handcuffs around her wrists was the loudest sound she had ever heard. They charged her with grand larceny and embezzlement. The district attorney, sensing a high-profile slam-dunk case, set the bail at an astronomical $10 million, double the amount stolen. It was a sum designed to be impossible. Alistair could have paid it with a single phone call. He didn't. Amelia was assigned a public defender, a harried young man who looked at the mountain of circumstantial evidence against her and advised her to plead guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence. She refused. The days leading up to the trial were a special kind of hell. She was held in the Bayview City Correctional Facility, a place of jarring noise and palpable despair. Her life of silk sheets and quiet art studios was replaced by a lumpy cot, a steel toilet, and the constant echoing clang of metal doors. She was terrified for her baby, for the stress that was coursing through her body, for the poor nutrition, and the ever-present threat of violence. The media frenzy was brutal. The tabloids dubbed her the penthouse pilferer and the gilded grifter. They ran old photos of her in college, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, alongside glamorous shots from society galas, crafting a narrative of a calculating social climber. Alistair, through a statement released by Sterling Innovations, expressed his profound disappointment and heartbreak and requested privacy during this difficult time. Isabella was often photographed by his side, a pillar of strength, her hand resting supportively on his arm. The trial was a grotesque piece of theatre. The prosecutor, a sharp-suited man with a flair for the dramatic, painted Amelia as a cold, manipulative thief. He presented the evidence methodically, the safe logs showing only her fingerprint for the dual authentication override the non-existent courier record. the conveniently missing text message, the duplicate file on Alistair's desk. Alistair took the stand. He looked haggard, a man betrayed. He spoke of his trust, his love for his wife, and the devastating shock of her deception. He never once looked Amelia in the eye. His testimony was the final brutal blow. It was the kiss of Judas delivered not with affection, but with the cold precision of a corporate execution. When it was her turn to testify, Amelia spoke her truth, her voice shaking but clear. She looked directly at the jury at the gallery, searching for one person who might see past the carefully constructed lies. She saw only suspicion and condemnation. Her story, the simple, unbelievable truth, sounded like a desperate fantasy against the weight of the prosecution's cold, hard facts. The jury was out for less than 2 hours. The foreman, a stout man with a grim expression, wouldn't meet her eyes as he handed the verdict to the bailiff. Amelia stood her hands, resting on her swollen belly, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. She already knew. On the charge of grand larceny in the first degree, the judge's voice boomed. "We the jury find the defendant Amelia Sterling guilty." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Amelia's legs gave way, and she would have collapsed if not for her lawyer grabbing her arm. She looked toward Alistair. For a fleeting microsecond, she saw a flicker of something in his eyes, doubt, regret. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a stony resolve. He turned and walked away, Isabella's hand firmly on his back, guiding him out of the courtroom and out of her life. 10 years in a federal penitentiary, the judge declared. The words were a death sentence, a decade. Her son would be 10 years old before she was free. The slam of the gavel echoed the sound of her cell door closing, sealing her in a concrete tomb, burying her alive in a lie she couldn't escape. The transfer to Alderson Federal Prison Camp, deceptively named for its location in the rolling hills of West Virginia, felt like a journey to another planet. The gilded cage of the penthouse was replaced by a world of grey concrete steel bars and the constant soul-crushing hum of institutional life. Amelia Sterling, society wife and art restorer, ceased to exist. She was now inmate 72431, a number in a system designed to strip away identity and hope. The first few weeks were a disorienting haze of fear. Every sound, a shouted command, a distant siren, the slam of a heavy gate sent a jolt of adrenaline through her, and she would instinctively wrap her arms around her belly, a primal urge to protect the innocent life within her. She was a pariah among the inmates. News of her high-profile case had preceded her. To them, she wasn't a fellow victim of the system. She was a rich girl who got caught, a Karen who had stolen millions and was now crying foul. They saw her soft hands, her educated speech, and her visible pregnancy as signs of weakness, vulnerabilities to be exploited. She learned to make herself small to avoid eye contact, to eat quickly, and retreat to the relative safety of her small, shared cell. Her cellmate, a woman named Diaz, serving time for drug trafficking, ignored her completely, which Amelia counted as a blessing. The loneliness was a physical ache, a constant companion that was second only to the gnawing terror for her son. The prison medical care was perfunctory and dismissive. The doctor, a weary man who looked at her as a complication, told her the stress wasn't ideal, but that babies are resilient. Her prenatal vitamins were considered contraband until they were approved weeks later. Every meal of processed starchy food felt like a betrayal of the child growing inside her. This concrete sterile place was her womb, and she feared it was poisoning him. One afternoon in the dreary prison yard, a group of women cornered her, their leader, a hard-faced woman named Jenkins. "Heard you lived in a penthouse." "Sterling, Jenkins sneered, backing her against a chain-link fence. "Probably had maids to wipe your ass for you. Bet you got something you can share with the rest of us." Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't have anything," she whispered, her hands protectively over her stomach. "Everyone's got something," Jenkins said, stepping closer. Just as the situation was about to escalate, a calm, powerful voice cut through the tension. "That's enough, Jenkins. Leave the girl alone." The voice belonged to Grace Peterson, a woman in her late 60s, known to everyone as Mama G. She was a prison legend, serving a life sentence for a crime she never talked about. She commanded a quiet, unshakable respect that even the guards acknowledged. She wasn't physically imposing, but her eyes held a wisdom and a weariness that spoke of 1,000 storms weathered. Jenkins sneered but backed off. "Whatever Mama G, she ain't worth it anyway." Later that day, Mama G found Amelia sitting alone in the library, staring blankly at the pages of a worn-out novel. She sat down opposite her, her presence solid and reassuring. "You can't show them you're scared," she said, her voice a low, gravelly rumble. "Fear in here is blood in the water. You got to put on a face, even if it's a lie. Especially if it's a lie." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. It was the first time anyone had shown her an ounce of kindness in months. "I don't know how to be in here," she confessed, her voice cracking. "I'm so scared for my baby." Mama G's gaze softened. She had raised 3 children on the outside before her life took its tragic turn. "That little one in there," she said, nodding at Amelia's belly. "He ain't a weakness. He's your armor. He's the reason you're going to get through this. You stop thinking about what you lost out there and start thinking about what you're fighting for in here." That conversation was a turning point. Mama G took Amelia under her wing, teaching her the unspoken rules of survival, how to navigate the complex social hierarchy, which guards were decent, and which to avoid, how to trade commissary items for small essentials, and most importantly, how to build a wall around her emotions, showing the world a face of stoic resolve. The despair didn't vanish, but it now had a purpose. Amelia's focus shifted from mourning her past life to fighting for her son's future. She also started fighting back legally. The public defender had been a dead end, so she spent her days in the prison law library, a dusty, neglected room filled with outdated legal texts. She read about appeals, about prosecutorial misconduct, about ineffective assistance of counsel. The legal jargon was dense and confusing, but she attacked it with the same meticulous patience she had once used on priceless paintings. She wrote letters to the ACLU, to the Innocence Project, to every pro bono law firm she could find. Most went unanswered. The few replies she received were polite rejections, stating her case lacked the DNA evidence or clear signs of misconduct they typically required. Then one day, she received a different kind of letter. It was from a woman named Sophia Reyes, a private defense attorney from a small but tenacious firm in Philadelphia known for taking on impossible cases. The letter was concise. "Miss Sterling, I have reviewed the preliminary details of your case. On the surface, it appears airtight. However, my firm specializes in cases where the narrative is too perfect. Your story of the missing text and non-existent courier is frankly unbelievable. It is precisely for that reason that I find it compelling. Guilt is often messy. The story constructed against you is suspiciously neat. I will be in West Virginia next week and would like to meet with you. Sincerely, Sophia Reyes Escort." A single fragile tendril of hope began to sprout in the barren landscape of Amelia's heart. It was the first time someone in a position of power hadn't dismissed her out of hand. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just inmate 77431, shouting into the void, When Sophia Reyes walked into the prison visitation room, she was not what Amelia expected. She was a petite, sharp-eyed woman with an aura of restless energy. She didn't offer sympathy or platitudes. She got straight to business, her questions precise and relentless. "Tell me about Isabella Vance." Sophia began, her pen poised over a legal pad. "Not what you think she did. Tell me who she is. Every detail. How she takes her coffee, the way she talks to subordinates, her relationship with your husband. Start from the beginning." Amelia spent 2 hours recounting every memory, every subtle slight, every moment of unsettling intimacy between Isabella and Alistair. She described Isabella's ambition, her obsession with efficiency and control, her uncanny ability to anticipate Alistair's needs before he was aware of them himself. Sophia listened intently, her expression unreadable. When Amelia was finished, Sophia tapped her pen on her notepad for a long moment. "The prosecution built a cage of circumstantial evidence around you," Sophia said finally. "My job is to find the key they forged to lock the door. This perfect frame has a flaw somewhere. People like Isabella Vance, the ones obsessed with control, always make one mistake. It's usually small, born of arrogance. Our job is to find it." As Amelia was escorted back to her cell block, the weight of the 10-year sentence still pressed down on her, but it felt different. It was no longer the crushing weight of despair. It was the heavy resistance of a door she was now determined to break down. She placed a hand on her belly where her son was kicking vigorously. "I'm coming for you," she thought, a silent promise to the child who knew her only from the inside. "I will not let you be born in this place. I will not let you be raised by a lie." The concrete walls of her prison were still standing, but for the first time, Amelia Sterling could see a crack in the foundation. While Amelia learned to navigate the stark realities of prison life, Alistair Sterling was drowning in the silent opulence of his. The penthouse, once a symbol of his success, now felt cavernous and empty. Every corner held a ghost of Amelia, the scent of her oil paints in the studio he'd locked, but couldn't bring himself to clear out the echo of her laughter in the hallways, the indentation on her side of the bed that his housekeepers couldn't seem to smooth away. Isabella had seamlessly moved into the space Amelia had vacated, both in the penthouse and in Alistair's life. She was the perfect partner, on paper, brilliant, ambitious, and utterly devoted to him and his empire. She managed his life with the same ruthless efficiency she managed the company. Their public appearances were flawless. The business world buzzed with admiration for the power couple who had weathered a scandalous storm and emerged stronger than ever. Sterling Innovations' stock price soared, but beneath the surface cracks were beginning to show. Alistair's guilt was a low-grade fever, a constant thrum of unease that he tried to suppress with work and alcohol. He would wake in the dead of night, the image of Amelia's devastated face at the verdict searing his mind. He told himself he was doing the logical thing, the only thing he could do, based on the evidence. He had been betrayed, and yet the question he'd buried deep inside himself kept bubbling to the surface. What if I was wrong? Isabella, sensitive to his moods, worked tirelessly to reinforce the narrative. "You can't torture yourself, Alistair," she would say, her hand gently rubbing his back. She fooled us all. It's a testament to how manipulative she was. You were the victim. Her control, which had once seemed supportive, began to feel suffocating. She reorganized his study, replacing his preferred chaos with sterile order. She filtered his calls, managed his emails, and subtly distanced him from old friends, and even family, who might question the official story. The first significant challenge to Alistair's fortified denial came from his father. Arthur Sterling was the patriarch of the family, a man of old money and even older principles who had built the original company Alistair had transformed into a tech giant. He visited the penthouse, unannounced, one Sunday afternoon. Arthur looked around the cold, minimalist space with disdain before fixing his sharp blue eyes on his son. "This place looks like a mausoleum," he said bluntly, "and you look like hell." "Father, it's not a good time," Alistair started. "It's never a good time for the truth, is it?" Arthur cut him off. "I watched your testimony on the news. I saw you crucify your pregnant wife in a court of law. The woman is a Sterling now, son, and she's carrying your heir. And you let them throw her in a cage based on the word of your ambitious assistant." He spat the last word like an epithet. "The evidence was overwhelming," Alistair said, his voice defensive. "Evidence?" Arthur scoffed. "You deal in data and code. I deal in people. I met that girl. Amelia doesn't have a greedy or dishonest bone in her body. But that Vance woman, her eyes are full of ledgers and contracts. You're a fool, Alistair. You traded a heart for a calculator, and you're going to regret it for the rest of your life." The words struck a nerve, aggravating the wound of doubt Alistair had been trying to ignore. He dismissed his father's concerns as old-fashioned sentimentality, but the seed of doubt had been watered. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Philadelphia, Sophia Reyes was conducting a deep dive into Isabella Vance's life, searching for the arrogant mistake she was sure existed. She started with her finances. Isabella was wealthy, yes, but her official salary and stock options couldn't account for certain recent large-scale cash withdrawals and subsequent deposits into murky shell corporations. It was a thread thin and easily explained away as savvy investing, but a thread nonetheless. Next, she investigated Isabella's digital footprint. It was pristine. Too pristine. Her social media was a carefully curated gallery of professional success and charitable galas. Her work communications were impeccably professional. It was the digital profile of someone who knew they might one day be scrutinized. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Sophia hired a private investigator, a former cybercrimes detective named Ben Carter, to dig into the background of Sterling Innovations' IT infrastructure. Ben found a record of a recent unscheduled security upgrade to the penthouse's server system, which handled all the home automation and security feeds. The work order was authorized by Isabella Vance 2 weeks before the theft. The contractor hired was a small third-party firm with a reputation for discretion and a history of employing grey hat hackers. "It's a ghost protocol," Ben explained to Sophia over a secure line. She had them install a back door. It would allow someone with the right credentials to remotely access and manipulate data logs without leaving a direct trace. They could delete text messages, loop security footage, even alter biometric access logs if they were clever enough. "Can you prove she used it?" Sophia asked, her heart racing. "That's the bitch of it," Ben said. "The protocol is designed to scrub its own signature after use. There's no active trace. All I have is the work order for its installation. It's suspicious as hell, but it's not a smoking gun." It was enough for Sophia. It was the first piece of concrete evidence that corroborated Amelia's seemingly impossible story. The missing text wasn't a delusion, it was a digital assassination. The security camera blind spot wasn't a coincidence, it was an exploited weakness. The dual fingerprint log wasn't an override, it was a fabrication. Back at Alderson, Amelia was nearing her due date. The physical and emotional toll of the pregnancy in prison was immense. A routine checkup revealed her blood pressure was dangerously high. The prison doctor, for once looking concerned, warned her about the risk of preeclampsia. He recommended a transfer to a hospital for monitoring, but the bureaucratic wheels turned with agonizing slowness. Amelia's fear for her son became a raw, overwhelming force. Mama G sat with her in the evenings, letting her cry, her usual tough demeanor, replaced by a maternal gentleness. "You gotta hold on, little bird," Mama G would say, her hand on Amelia's shoulder. "You're a mother now. There's no stronger creature on this earth. You just hold on. Your lawyer is fighting on the outside, and you and that little boy are fighting on the inside. It's a war on two fronts." One evening, Amelia received a letter from Sophia. It was cautiously optimistic, detailing the discovery of the ghost protocol. For the first time, Amelia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. It wasn't just her word against the world anymore. There was a path, however narrow and treacherous, that might lead to the truth. Holding the letter to her chest, she felt her son kick. It was a strong, insistent movement, a reminder of the life that depended entirely on her. She looked at the grey concrete walls of her cell, not as the edges of her world, but as a temporary obstacle. The unravelling had begun. Isabella's perfect crime was starting to fray at the seams. All they needed was one more pull to bring the entire fabrication crashing down. The discovery of the ghost protocol was a critical turning point, but Sophia Reyes knew it wasn't enough to overturn a conviction. A prosecutor would argue it was a standard security upgrade, and that Isabella as COO was merely being diligent. She needed more. She needed a human element. She needed to find the person Isabella had paid to pull the trigger. Ben Carter, the cyber investigator, focused his attention on the small tech firm that had installed the protocol, Cybernetic Solutions. It was a ghost company with a rented mailbox and no physical office. But corporations, even ghost ones, have to pay people. Ben cross-referenced the firm's financial records with known associates of Isabella Vance. It was painstaking work, like searching for a single grain of sand on a vast beach. After weeks of dead ends, he found a name, Julian Croft, a freelance cybersecurity expert with a brilliant mind, a gambling problem, and a recent unexplained influx of $200,000 into his accounts. The money had been funneled through 3 different offshore accounts before landing in his name, the exact digital laundering pattern Sophia had noticed in Isabella's own finances. When Ben dug into Croft's digital history, he found a deleted but recoverable email fragment on a discarded server. It contained only 3 words: Nightingale Docks, Penthouse, Thursday. It was the smoking gun. Sophia knew she had to approach Croft carefully. A man like him would spook easily. She didn't go in with threats. She went in with an offer. She found him in a high-stakes underground poker game in a warehouse district, his face slick with sweat, a pile of chips dwindling in front of him. She waited until he'd lost everything and was nursing a cheap whiskey at the bar. "Julian Croft," she said, sliding onto the stool next to him. He eyed her warily. "Who's asking?" "My name is Sophia Reyes. I'm a lawyer, and I think we can help each other out," she said, placing a business card on the bar. "I know about the $200,000. I know about the ghost protocol at the Sterling penthouse. And I know Isabella Vance paid you to digitally frame a pregnant woman." Croft's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The DA might be interested in your untaxed income, not to mention charges of conspiracy perjury and evidence tampering. You'd be an accessory to grand larceny," Sophia continued calmly. "You'll do hard time, or you could sign an affidavit, testify as to what you did for Isabella Vance, and in return I can offer you full immunity from prosecution and a consulting fee that will more than cover your losses tonight. Your choice." Julian Croft, a man who lived his life playing the odds, looked at the losing hand he'd been dealt. He knew when to fold. Back in Bayview City, Alistair's world continued its slow-motion collapse. His father's words had festered, and he found himself replaying every moment of his relationship with Amelia, searching for the signs of deception he'd been so sure were there. He found none. He remembered her genuine delight at the smallest things, her fierce loyalty, her quiet strength. It didn't align with the portrait of the master manipulator Isabella had painted. His suspicions began to focus on Isabella herself. He noticed her subtle control over his information, the way she would answer his phone or summarize his emails before he had a chance to read them. One night, fueled by scotch and a gnawing dread, he did something he hadn't done in years. He went behind her back. He used his master administrator credentials to access the raw server logs for the penthouse, bypassing the user-friendly interface she had designed for him. He was a tech genius. It didn't take him long to find the remnants of the ghost protocol Ben Carter had identified. It was sloppy work left behind by a hacker who thought no one would ever look this deep. Alistair could see the digital fingerprints of an intrusion, a remote manipulation of the safe logs, and a data wipe that corresponded to the exact time Amelia's phone would have received the phantom text message. The world tilted on its axis. The evidence hadn't been overwhelming. It had been manufactured. He felt a cold wave of nausea. He hadn't been a victim of his wife's betrayal. He had been a gullible fool, a willing pawn in Isabella's twisted game. He had sent an innocent woman, the mother of his child, to prison. The weight of his colossal, unforgivable mistake threatened to crush him. Just as this sickening realization was dawning, his private line rang. It was the warden from Alderson. The voice on the other end was grave. "Mr. Sterling, I'm calling about your wife, Amelia. She's had a medical emergency, severe preeclampsia. We're transferring her to the hospital. Her blood pressure is critical. The doctors, they're concerned about both her and the baby. They need to perform an emergency C-section." The words struck Alistair with the force of a physical blow. While he had been living in luxury, blinded by lies, Amelia had been suffering, fighting for her life and the life of their son in a concrete hell he had helped build. Her health was failing because of the stress he had allowed to be inflicted upon her. He hung up the phone, the room spinning around him. The whispers of doubt had become a deafening roar of truth. It was all a lie, and his confession, the truth he now had to tell, was coming dangerously, tragically too late. Alistair moved through the penthouse like a phantom, his mind a maelstrom of guilt and frantic urgency. The warden's words echoed in his ears, concerned about both her and the baby. Every second he had wasted living Isabella's lie was a second Amelia had suffered, a second their son's life had been in jeopardy. He found Isabella in the master bedroom, trying on a diamond necklace he'd bought her for an upcoming gala. She was admiring her reflection in the mirror, a picture of triumphant beauty. The sight of it so grotesquely at odds with the image of Amelia in a sterile hospital bed, fighting for her life, filled him with a rage so pure and cold it burned. "It was you," he said, his voice a low, shaking whisper. Isabella turned her smile, faltering slightly as she saw the look on his face. "Alistair, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," he answered, his voice gaining strength. "The ghost of the woman I sent to prison because of you. I saw the server logs, Isabella. I saw the ghost protocol, the data manipulation. All of it." Her composure cracked, but only for a second. The mask of concern was replaced by a chillingly calm defiance. "Don't be ridiculous, you're just stressed. You've been under a lot of pressure." "Don't lie to me," he roared, slamming his hand down on the dressing table, sending perfume bottles skittering. "Not anymore." The bearer bonds the faked text, the courier the safe logs. It was all you framed her. You framed my wife." Isabella let out a short, bitter laugh. The pretense was over. "Framed her, Alistair, I saved you. She was a leech, a common little artist, clinging to your wealth and your name. She was a weakness, a distraction from your legacy, from our legacy. I did what had to be done." The casual cruelty of her confession stole the air from his lungs. "She was carrying my son," he choked out. "A child she would have used to control you for the rest of your life." Isabella counted her eyes, flashing with a venomous fire he'd never seen before. "I have stood by you for 10 years. I helped you build this empire from the ground up while she was playing with paint. I earned this life I earned you. She was an obstacle. I simply removed her. You destroyed her." He whispered, the horror of it settling upon him. "She's in the hospital. She might die. Our baby might die. Because of you." "That's a shame," Isabella said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "But it's not my problem, and you'll never prove a thing. It's my word against the ramblings of a disgraced convict. Who do you think they'll believe?" In that moment, Alistair saw her for what she truly was. Not a brilliant partner, but a sociopath wrapped in a designer suit. The love he thought he might have felt for her curdled into pure revulsion. His own culpability was a crushing weight, but her complete lack of remorse was monstrous. "They'll believe me," he said, his voice suddenly calm, resolute. He pulled out his phone. "Because I'm going to confess." Isabella's eyes widened in genuine shock. "What, don't be a fool, Alistair. You'll ruin yourself, the company, your reputation, everything we've built." "It's already ruined," he said, looking at her with dead eyes. "It was ruined the moment I chose to believe you over her." He started to dial. Isabella lunged for the phone, her nails scratching his hand. For a moment they struggled, a desperate, ugly tussle in the heart of their stolen paradise. He shoved her away, and she stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. Her face was a contorted mask of fury and disbelief. "You can't!" she shrieked. "I won't let you." But it was too late. He was already talking, his voice steady and clear. "My name is Alistair Sterling. I need to report a crime, a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and I am the primary witness." Simultaneously, Sophia Reyes was making a call of her own. Armed with Julian Croft's sworn affidavit, she was filing an emergency motion for Amelia's immediate release and the exoneration of all charges. She was on a private jet, hurtling towards West Virginia, the signed document feeling like a holy relic in her briefcase. The two forces of truth, one born of guilt, the other of justice, were now converging on the same point, the small regional hospital, where Amelia Sterling was fighting for 2 lives. Alistair arrived at the hospital in a daze, trailed by the detectives he had summoned. The pristine white corridors felt like an extension of his penthouse, another sterile environment where a life-or-death drama was unfolding. He was met by a grim-faced doctor. "Mr. Sterling, I'm Dr. Evans. Your wife is out of surgery. It was complicated. We had to perform an emergency hysterectomy to control the bleeding." The doctor paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "She won't be able to have any more children." The news was another vicious blow. Isabella hadn't just stolen a year of Amelia's life. She had stolen her future fertility, a future they had planned together. "And the baby?" Alistair asked, his voice barely a whisper. "A boy," the doctor said. "He's premature, just over 4 pounds, and he's in the NICU. He's a fighter, but the next 48 hours are critical." A fighter, like his mother. Alistair asked to see her. He was led to a private room in the maternity ward, a space secured by prison guards. Amelia was lying on the bed, pale, and still an IV drip in her arm. Even unconscious, her face was etched with pain and exhaustion. Seeing her there, so fragile and broken, shattered the last of Alistair's defences. He sank into a chair by her bedside, the sobs he had suppressed for months finally breaking free. They were harsh, ragged sounds of a man whose soul had been ripped open. He had it all, the money, the power, the empire, and in his arrogant blindness he had allowed it to cost him the only thing that had ever truly mattered. He had let a serpent into his garden, and she had poisoned everything. Now all he could do was sit and wait, praying for a chance to apologize, knowing full well that no apology could ever be enough. The confession had been made, but redemption felt 1,000,000 miles away. The news of Alistair Sterling's confession detonated like a bomb. The media narrative inverted overnight. Headlines screamed of the shocking betrayal, painting Amelia as the tragic heroine, and Isabella Vance seen in handcuffs as the story's chilling villain. The public, once quick to condemn, now clamoured for Amelia's freedom. In a quiet hospital room, Amelia surfaced from a fog of anesthesia to an altered reality. A nurse gently explained the events. The emergency C-section had saved her and her son. But a necessary hysterectomy meant he would be her only child. Soon after, Sophia Reyes arrived, placing the official exoneration papers in her hand. "You're a free woman, Amelia," she said, her voice warm. The words felt unreal, the culmination of a fight she had almost lost hope in winning. Her first act as a free woman was to see her son. In the NICU, surrounded by the soft beeping of monitors, she saw him in his incubator. He was impossibly small, yet perfect. As she reached in to touch him, his tiny fingers curled around hers with surprising strength. In that moment, the prison, the trial, and the pain all faded. "Ethan," she whispered, naming him, claiming him a single point of light in the darkness she had endured. Alistair visited the next day, a ghost of the powerful man he once was. "Amelia." He began, his voice thick with a shame that seemed to radiate from him. "What I did, it's unforgivable. I was a coward. I chose the lie because it was easier. I've told my lawyers to transfer everything to you and Ethan. I'll go to prison. It's what I deserve." Amelia looked at the broken man before her, the love she once felt for him replaced by a cold, quiet emptiness. She asked the only question that mattered. "Why did you believe her over me?" His answer was brutal in its honesty. "Because I was weak, and her story protected my ego." Amelia took a steadying breath. "I accept your apology, Alistair. Not for you, but for me. I need to be whole for my son. But I do not, and I cannot forgive you. You didn't just doubt me. You condemned me." Her voice was devoid of malice, a simple statement of fact. "You and I are finished. I want you to leave now." He left without another word, a millionaire who had lost everything of value. Weeks later, Amelia walked out of the hospital with a stronger, healthier Ethan in her arms. Facing a swarm of reporters, she didn't flinch. Her face was not that of a victim, but of a survivor. She was no longer defined by the Sterling name or the lies that had imprisoned her. She was simply a mother, holding her son, stepping into a future that was, for the first time, in a very long time, her own. Amelia Sterling's story is a harrowing journey through the darkest depths of betrayal and the brightest heights of a mother's love. She was stripped of her name, her freedom, and her future, all because one man was too weak to trust his heart, and one woman was consumed by a venomous jealousy. Her fight for truth from the confines of a concrete womb and her ultimate exoneration serves as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But it is also a tragic reminder that some wounds, no matter how deep the apology, can never truly heal. The confession came, justice was served, but the price was a shattered family and a life irrevocably changed. If Amelia's fight for her son moved, you please show your support by hitting the like button. Share this story to spread awareness about the devastating consequences of wrongful convictions. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that need to be told. Thank you for listening.